I breathe in and I breathe out. A day like this is one to remember where I found something called Gara Girl, a virtual YouTuber online. I think she's pretty cute really. I only watch about 2,000 of her videos by now, download all the streams, and now my entire walls of my room is now covered with shark posters. I think it's pretty nice honestly. Some people call it addiction that I spend about 30 hours a day watching her videos, but I think they're pretty crazy. No, you're crazy. No, you're crazy. Exactly. I'm fine. Anyhow, though, in a moment of heat, I decided to drive someone else's car into the sea. And during that intermediate interactions, I came with the only conclusion that I also should become an anime girl. I started off my journey on my transformations if I reusing an realistic sculpt of mine that I did a while back. I stretched out the eyes, pull in the mouth inside a ZBrush, and find it much easier to sculpt inside Blender with those simplified kind of models which only use about 300 to 400k inverted count. After I think the model got good, I did a reportology of the character using large shapes to start off with, before adding more details with some loopy loops. I saw recommendations on the use of multi-res modifier as part of the reportology workflow inside Blend before, but it's not something that has really worked for me all that well, and I usually just apply all the modifiers for my reportology before extruding and adding all the characters that's needed inside for functionality, such as the mouth, inside the eyes, or yeah, just the tongues in general. I found that adding the multi-res modifier kind of messed things a little bit, so I just kind of just avoid it. After finishing the reportology of the character, I got a little confused. My son saw the fish inside of a pond filled with ducks. I wasn't quite sure which direction to be heading anymore, and I feel very lost. I knew the following process required me to proceed into Unity, to which point I had not really touched for over half a year now and was not really that frequent at it. The end, which the point was to convert all the models into VRM format. I know for a fact the Blender shaders and Unity shaders are completely different and don't match. So was there really a point in setting everything up in Blender, or should I just set all the shaders finally up in Unity? Because there's not really that much point if the difference can be so major. It was thoughts and questions and needs of these that put me into a deep corner slumber. If only I was not suffering from insomnia. There's a lot of people that mention things like the cat's add-on inside Blender and dynamic burns inside Unity to get the physics attached to clothing. It's honestly quite confusing telling people to use it without explaining anything about what it does really. Anyhow though, the two channels that I found the most useful was Kamizhou and also GoogieTV, with Kamizhou being my primary resource and Googie being my secondary to use things to see things from a different perspective. Need to reference preparations of a model into Unity, so things to add for the bones, how to set up eye tracking inside Blender, or how to set up the shape keys and what is required for a model to be placed inside Unity or anything else. It wasn't really touched there, so that was kind of the part I had to figure out on my own. Due to time I was making the model, an additional resource also came out that I found pretty useful, called Priichu, which is a pretty good summary starting from the UV topology and shading stages onwards to creating the VRM file inside of Unity using Mixer mode to rig out her character instead doing everything manually. Something that kind of threw me in a loop out doing the VRM file stuff is that the VRM software doesn't exactly use bones for the facial expressions. So instead of putting bones on top of the eyes, bones on the mouth and stuff like that and getting it to move and manipulate it, it all kind of depends on shape keys that you put in. So you want to have a shape key for the mouth opening, the shape key for the mouth not closing. I guess it kind of switched that between the default and the open state. But like kind of the shape keys for the mouth pronunciation for A or this expression of happiness, which is kind of something that's really interesting to me, and definitely something the first time I ever done something like this really. The showcase by default set aside the Uni VRM packaging is called Natural A E U E O Blink Joy Anger, Happy, and I think the last one is Sorrow. So those are the few defaults you can have, but each of the VR programs contains a bit more expressions than it allows to. VC Face, which is the one I'm using right now, allows you to up to 10, so I have 6 free slots on the side of me that allows me to manipulate. So you can all add that inside Unity when you have all the shape keys ready. So when making my character, I was pretty scared of of going into the shape key area. So after creating the blinking keys, I kind of just started working on the hair, which resulted in about 5 different variations. So the best way I found to create a hair that's on my character right now is, see, that's like a single piece. Well, it's really just use a single piece of geometry, so a single mesh. What I usually do is to create a sculpt the hair and then slowly start to extrude out the different edges of the hair to make all these fluffy parts. And then the solidify modifier, it kind of fills everything out and make everything solid. Though, as a tip though, I do actually recommend to make the hair actually a bit thicker than required right now, because when I move around a bit too much, you can see all different angles, especially in the back. You can see different parts of the hair going through the head, even with gliders on, with dynamics. This is also a similar thing I recommend for the skirt as well. Just make sure you add enough dynamic bones there, so when everything collides everything, the dynamic bones actually able to control the meshes efficiently as possible. So add a lot of bones for the hair and also the skirt. It's weird to say that you're adding bones and stuff like that to the skirt, but just do it. Believe me, I'm a doctor. No, I'm not. I barely graduated high school. Oh, god damn it. After getting lazy, I kind of just start shooting up the feet of the shoes inside the ZBrush by using masking. I finish off the rest of the shape keys I want to try out, so like defaults, A, E, E, O. At first I tried out to create the clothing inside Marvelous Designer, but I soon found out it was kind of difficult to get the baggy feel of the clothing, and the overlapping nature of my design made it hard for the simulation to deal with. Moving into Blender to do this clothing sculpt instead. For the skirt, it was just some basic extrusions for getting even added thickness to it, really, so it's kind of just a brush job. It was actually quite funny for me in comparing the amount of effort that I placed in the hair compared to the skirt. It was supposed to be like a prototype to learn some skills for this avatar. That's the point of it, just learn some stuff. But I actually did end up quite a bit better than I originally thought. Rigging up the character, I used Rigify Skeleton as a base, removing all the extra face, neck, head, body, and hand bones. Just to make sure you don't actually generate the mesh though, you just want to keep it as the base. As Unity or other programs doesn't really progress constraints of Blender, like at all, so it's really no use, just make sure you only have the deformed bones in there. Unity wants to use a single neck and head bone, 3 bones that form the torso, so remove one of those then. And lastly, within the hands, it does not require additional bones leading into the fingers. After all that's done, I make sure all the transformation and modifiers are applied within the origin of the mesh, located in the right places, and I break the character into the mesh, leaving the skirt and also the hair 2 lines so I can add additional bones that only will be weighted onto those meshes. I selected all the meshes that I want to include, checking the modifiers are attached aside from the rig. Then I exported the mesh as FBX format into selected objects ticked on into Unity. Just make sure though you actually have no other modifiers actually attached. Having other modifiers like subdivision, bevel, or whatever not applied to a mesh will result in the shape keys not appearing inside Unity. The version I used inside my project was Unity 2018.4.1. Though through some troubleshooting, I do find out any version above 2018 seems to work fine. And yeah, using any other tutorials on the subject matter, I basically did the same thing, including injected Uni VRM packaging. Yada. With the exception that I like to manually make all the materials by myself. So I like manually dragging in each of the textures and setting everything out. Some people like just hit a box that says to automatically find all the textures inside the PC locally. Just put it inside it and create the materials. I'm not really a fan of that. I like doing things by myself kind of deal. Though if you want to do that as well, yeah, feel free to. Don't exactly know how to do that. I use MTunes for my model, so I think that's the most commonly used VRM format of shader. I mean, so yeah, that's pretty neat. I rigged characters, set my character to humanoid and for the rigging, and just reorder some bones that might be wrongly put. Especially for the face and the chin area, some of the hair bones getting stuck in there. Just make sure everything's fixed up and everything's matching correctly. After that though, I do my first export after setting out the shaders and stuff like that, obviously, and then just for the normalization, then importing back the VRM file back into Unity again, and that's by the time I added all the dynamic bones, or the string bones in this case, or all the gliders, set all the shape keys, and then a small thing I would actually recommend for people to keep in mind before exporting the actual character for your final export is to make sure the front of your character is actually pointing towards the Z axis, is not the Z minus axis. Otherwise, the character actually appear backwards and all the animation will be flipped and not very all that usable. So yeah, just make sure it's facing towards the Z direction and everything should be fine. I import my VRM model finally into VC phase and also VDraw. Inside of VDraw, you can clearly see some interception issues where the leg is poking off the skirt, and I want to fix that next time by creating a proper version. And by the final character for the software is also has a bit of that as well, where the leg go through it, though not as extreme. So I'm not too sure about what to do. So I'll just try to make the skirt or all the parts of hair a lot more thicker and just add a lot more dynamic burns to it. Okay, I think that's really the only way I can do it. Another issue that I came across with Vitro is that the weighting on the upper arm seems to be carrying too much of the effect for the upper front of the shoulder bit, so like the upper chest area, which isn't really that good, so I did improve the weighting a bit. And I think that's the same thing for the back of the back as well, or just the upper back. And this seems to be carrying too much weight to it. And so when you actually move the arm itself, like some of the front of the chest that moves as well, which isn't really normal, and I really just only wanted a bit of the upper shoulder to move alongside the arm a bit, but that's kind of difficult to do, so maybe improve next time. Overall though, I think I did pretty good for the model. I like it. It turns out a lot better than originally thought, and yeah. So this is my first attempt with the VRM model. Thanks for watching and hope everyone has a great day.